So let's get into a sample essay for prompt 1. All right, this is an example of how one student chose to address this prompt, right? Now, right off the bat, this student has a sentence that clearly states what school they're interested in, all right, the College of Literature, Science, and the Arts, and how it fits into their personal purpose and life goals, right? So early on, readers have learned important information about this student, including their goals. They want to become a trilingual clinical psychologist, and they also learn about their values, and this is through their emphasis on scholarship and community service. Now, this isn't the most creative of introductions, but it does get the job done, and it clearly outlines what this student is trying to achieve with this essay. Now, you can definitely choose to start with a bit more of an artsy approach, such as an anecdote or a metaphor, but make sure that you still hit on the points of what school you want to pursue, and 2, how it fits into your future. All right, moving on to part 2. Another solid point in this student's favor is their mention of a specific class, right? Psych 211002, Mind, Music, and Community. By naming both a specific course and how they plan to participate in it, they're setting a clear vision of what they plan to do at a place like Michigan, right? Their course selection also corroborates this commitment, right? This commitment to community service that they mentioned in the first part of their essay and here as well. And it sets a narrative that they can continue throughout their response, right? This notion of community service and music, right? This section could be improved a little bit through some inclusion of maybe their past use of music and community service, something similar like that. Some sort of a metaphorical thread that would link their past to their future and could just round this whole narrative out. But that's what I see as being the most effective piece of feedback. But on the whole, again, this is still very strong, right? All right, carrying on part 3. Now, this answer in this area it's really structured. It's not super creative and flowy, and that's fine if this is your writing style. But again, you should keep in mind that essays, like I alluded to before, these are a chance for you to really show colleges your personality and your writing prowess, right? What your style is. This section of the response does repeat the first one about this musical psychology class, but the student doesn't give too much word count to each of them, so that's honestly fine. It's not immediately clear from the essay if the student is of Latinx heritage or if they were, but it would be a good time for them to mention, if they are of Latinx heritage, this would be a really good time for them to mention their own experiences rather than piggybacking off the heritage of their friends, right? Or they should focus instead on how specifically they plan to use their knowledge of Spanish and indigenous societies to further a career or some sort of life goal, right? Again, sometimes it's about connecting yourself to a lot of other different things in your life, but you need to remember that you are the center of all of these stories, right? It's you that they want to learn information about. So you need to be mindful of the information you include and about whether that is giving admissions officers more insight as to who you are as a person, right? Remember, this personal statement it's about you. It's about your experiences. And admissions officers are very good at detecting when you're using the stories of others as a crutch, right? This is why there have been these sort of anecdotes that people have talked about in the landscape of critical reflections on college admissions. Oh, you can't talk about your grandparents anymore. You can't talk about like X type of people. And that's only because admissions officers have become aware of when people use others' experience as a crutch at best and a sob story at worst, right? So just be mindful of that, but you're still absolutely allowed to talk about these sorts of things. Just you need to remember to keep yourself centered as the main character of this story, right? All right, carrying on here, part 4. This student continues with some more solid examples around academic pursuits at UMich, right? So you're going to want to look for ways that you can explore your academic interests outside of the classroom as well. However, this student does make a bit of an error when describing the research. Now, the only connection they state to the research is a shared heritage rather than giving other personal details about their life that explain why this research is so important to them. The student they could have used some of the word count around the research to discuss, again, their own experiences with perfectionism and mental health, right? This would make for a much more compelling approach rather than just listing off the lab's research. This is what sort of makes this section read a little bit like a pitch or a resume or a log of accomplishments, right? Things like that. So that's one area of improvement that stuck out to me reading through this portion of the essay. All right. Carrying on here, we get to part 5. All right. Metaphors such as the cherry atop the LSA sundae. These are good inclusions, but only if they make sense and are consistent throughout the essay. So here the student had an opportunity to be creative, but it fell a little bit flat in a way that seemed a little bit random, a little bit out of place. Extended metaphors, if you're going to include them, extended metaphors should be exactly that, extensive, right? They should pervade your entire essay, and they shouldn't lose focus on the topics at hand when you include them. So don't put the cart before the horse, right? Don't make your content service the metaphor. Make the metaphor service your content, right? Now, I would also like to note there is no mention of this student's high school extracurriculars here. There is a 550 word count maximum, so you have a lot of space to be making these connections as well. And it did stick out to me that this student didn't really mention much about their extracurriculars, because if these interests are really deep, I'm sure that this student has pursued these interests outside of the classroom up to this point in their life in some way or fashion, that in order to provide them with the basis for developing this level of engagement in what they would do at LSA. Okay. On to the final part here. Now, the student does a good job, for sure, of connecting their intellectual pursuits with opportunities both inside and out of the classroom in this section. They intertwine psychology and cultural awareness in a way that shows a level of critical thinking about their career that will appeal to a lot of admissions officers, for sure. Now, in terms of final thoughts, right? Overall, as a whole, this essay, it shows a lot of dedication, a lot of research, but there are some words describing UMich programs that could have been better served going towards self-reflection by the student rather than going in as much detail about UMich's programs. With a little more writing flair and some personalization, and honestly, again, a little bit more centering of the student within their own story, this essay could be really amazing, for sure. So those are some points of feedback, but overall, it is definitely still a strong essay, but there are some points where it could be more narratively and personally interesting.